Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
Moving forward now, we are moving towards the last stage of our session. That is, which are the various approaches that are important in counseling. I would be discussing two of them. One is directive counseling, and another is non-directive counseling. That is a directive approach towards learners and non-directive approach towards learners with regard to their problem solution. So you have a diagram on your screen. Okay, it is from Downey's book, Effective Coaching, as you can see it at the bottom of that screenshot. What you get here are two particular words. On one side there is push, and on another side there is written what is pull. That is basically the difference between directive and non-directive counseling. In directive, you push that particular person towards something. In non-directive, you pull that particular person towards you. Now there are various phrases in between also, and at the center of that diagram you have giving feedback. So in both the cases you give feedback. So what do you do in push? The first thing is tell, then instruct, then give advice, then offer guidance and give feedback. That is the push approach. What do you do when you pull? That is listen. That is the first thing. Then reflect upon what you have listened to, paraphrase, summarize, ask questions, and make suggestions. So this is pretty much the push-pull approach. In directive, the name suggests you give a direction. In non-directive, you just listen and allow that person to come to his or her own direction or own solution of that particular problem. You don't tell that person that you might do this. That is pulling that person towards something which is good. So this is basically a push-pull approach that you have in non-directive and directive counseling approaches. Now, what do you do in directive approach? The first thing that you do is the authoritarian point of view is largely associated with the work of Sigmund Freud. This is the Freudian way of looking at things. Okay, so according to this theory, the learner is ignorant and unaware of the reasons for his difficulties or sufferings. That person is suffering, but that person doesn't know what is the problem. A strange situation. You are suffering, but you don't know why are you suffering. So that is when you direct. Remember this push approach? You direct that person. Then the learner is therefore helpless, and it is the therapist, that is you, who has to play the role of interpreting the material for him or her. There is a problem in his or her understanding of facts, situation, things, whatever you say. So what do you do there? What you do is you become a therapist, help that person to overcome that. Then the psychological difficulties that he or she is facing, according to psychoanalysis, are explained as phenomena that are strictly psychologically determined. Follow what that person is not following and make that person follow in that particular way. And this principle is known as psychological determinism. Okay, moving further, you have on your screen two boxes. In one box you have certain points. So which are they? What do you do in directive approach? You make suggestions. That is the first thing you do. Then give them feedback based on your suggestions. Then offer them guidance, give them advice, instruct, and more importantly, or rather most importantly, solve the problem. Now, you might say that in one of the earlier slides, I said that counseling is not problem solving, but not at the long term goal concept. It is problem solving, but in a very immediate goal concept. You will have to solve certain problems to make them, that particular person, feel comfortable, feel assured that that person is actually at the right individual with regard to talking. Okay, then you move towards the stages of directive approach. You have chart again here. At the center, you have stages of approach, and around that, you have various stages. Which is the first thing? You analyze. Analyze. What do you analyze? SWOT analysis, as simple as that. Strengths and weaknesses, etc. Then synthesize. What do you synthesize? Strengths together, weaknesses together, opportunities together, and threats together. Marginalize them, compartmentalize them individually. What do you do first? Focus on strengths. Why on strengths? To give that person confidence. Then, after that, when that person is confident enough, focus on weaknesses. Now, the weakness box has to be empty. All the points have to go in strengths. Strengths relate to opportunities, and threats, therefore, are eliminated. That is how you progress towards counseling any particular person. Diagnosis: what is the problem actually? Why are you not behaving in the way in which you should or you are capable of? Prognosis is also equally important. Counseling in general, and at the end, following up. Okay, so now when we started, we had 4 strengths within you, 8 weaknesses in you. So when you follow up after some times, what do you do? 2 weaknesses and 10 strengths. So 6 weaknesses are eliminated. That is how you work. Every strength cannot be eliminated at one point. You need to take time or take everything individually. Okay. Moving forward, what does counseling, therefore, in the directive approach involve? Look at the first point: assisting the learner in self appraisal. That is the first thing you do. Second thing is helping him or her to plan a course of action which utilizes the capabilities and potentialities so identified. You should know what you're good at. How would you know? If you are not good enough knowing it your own self, go to a counselor. Who is a counselor? You are a counselor. You don't know what your strength is. Okay. In psychology, that is known as theory of immersion. Okay. What do you do in that? You push a person in the water, and don't go with that person. That person doesn't know how to swim. Push that person to swim. If he or she does not learn, you are there at the back to help. Otherwise, he or she would learn. So that is how you make that person learn things. Then finally, in establishing an adaptive lifestyle, this is very important. What happens with the psychology of young adults, if I may say, is that they are very rigid in terms of what they like and what they don't like. They are not adaptive to certain things because of ego. That age has a lot of ego. Do you remember that? So what happens is, you might not adapt to something new simply because you say that this is not good. Perhaps you don't know why this is not good or why this is good. So be adaptive at everything. Okay, allow yourself to be adaptive as a person, and you also as a counselor have to be or has to be very adaptive with regard to certain problems. You should not tell your learner that, okay, you cannot discuss this problems with me. You can only come to me for such problems. So cognitive aspect of counseling is important, but psychotherapeutic is even more important, because that would allow the person to be cognitively more powerful. Then you have steps of effective counseling. Okay, so when we discuss steps here, which are the steps? You can see a chart on your screen again. The first step is as simple as that: problem identification. Second, this is with regard to, by the way, directive counseling. Second is plan, coordinate, and organize. Plan the steps, coordinate, and organize them. Third is conduct the session using sincerity. Most importantly, you should be sincere as a listener. Second, be compassionate. And third thing, which we miss sometimes, is be very kind to your students. Then, during that particular session, what do? You determine what that person believes causes the counterproductive behavior, or what is required to change. Sometimes something instigates that person. What do you do then? You identify that and come out with a solution. Try to maintain a sense of timing as to when to be directive, that is when to push, when to be non-directive, when to pull. Okay. Then using all the facts from whatever you have on your platter after that person has told you of almost everything, what do? Make a decision and or plan of action to correct the problem. You try to do that. If more counseling is needed, set a firm date and time. That is very important. You should give that person a particular date. Okay, this is what we have discussed. Let us meet next week on that day on this particular time. We'll be further discussing your issues which you might be facing, but after a week. Why a week? You need to give that person a bit of time to settle down, also to analyze what he or she has done as well. So it should not be instant. There should be some time set between, time which is very free to reanalyze what he or she thinks about his or her life. Okay, so moving towards assumptions of directive counseling, you can have it on your screen here. These are according to Willie. What he believes. The first thing is competency in giving advice is very important when you are counseling in a directive way. You should be competent enough to give advice, first of all, as teachers, all of us are. Second is counseling is an intellectual process. Okay, don't take it as something that you're doing it, which is very result oriented and very mechanical. It is a highly intellectual way of looking at things. So you'll have to be very involved in what you do. Third thing is it has the objectives of a problem solving attitude. Okay, you should be doing it so that you can solve problems in directive counseling or through directive counseling. And at the end, learners incapability of solving the process is actually the problem. Okay, because learner is not capable, therefore you start counseling that person in a directive way. Now these are advantages, after which we will be looking also at the limitations. So what are the advantages of counseling? The first point on your screen is this method is useful from the time consuming viewpoint, as it saves time because you are directly on the point. You're not going around that particular person or trying to look for the background of that particular person. You're not trying to bring something out which is not told to you. You have a problem, you're trying for a solution. It is as simple as that. Second point is in this type of counseling, there is more focus on the problem and the person. Okay, you're directly focused, you are zeroing in on the problem instantly without looking at other problems. Your focus is one particular problem. Third is the counselor can look the learner directly and try to make sure that there is involvement in him or her. You should be very aware of whether that person is involved, because remember, you are pushing that person towards something. Okay, then counseling focuses more on intellectual aspects of the person than emotional. So you are more into the mind of that person and not into his feelings or emotions and senses. And that makes you very pinpoint. You are directly at something. And in this particular process, the counselor becomes readily available to help, which makes the learner very happy. You are at that place instantly, okay, because it is a direct problem for which you have a direct solution. These kinds of counseling sessions are normally educative counseling sessions. They come to you with a problem which is academic, you solve that problem. That is when directive counseling comes into account. Okay, those problems are very forefronted, very academic, and which can be discussed very publicly also. If you're not following something, they come to you for a solution for that particular point. As you have problem solving sessions that you might have, when you ask at the end of the session, do you have any doubts? That doubt is directive counseling method. There is a doubt, then there is a solution to that particular doubt. Okay, now there are certain limitations also. You can see three limitations here on your screen. A is that in this process, the learner is more dependent. This is not serving your purpose. Why are you a teacher? You are a teacher because you want your learner to be independent. So this is a limitation in directive counseling. Second, that is B, is unless and until a person does not develop some attitude through experiences, he or she cannot make any decision himself, because that person is not trying to solve that problem himself or herself. That makes that person dependent or parasite. Kind of parasite is a very harsh word, but that person is spoon feeding actually, so that the intellectual development is not happening. And C is that the counselor fails in serving the learner to commit the mistakes in future. Okay, now here this is the problem. When you solve a problem instantly, what happens is only that problem is solved, nothing else. Whereas if you tell that person that you can do this yourself, which happens in non-directive counseling, now that is the problem. You have a problem, you give that person solution, okay, that person is comfortable, because when there would be a problem again, they know that you are there for that particular solution. Don't overdo this. Directive counseling academically is also not that good. Instead, if that person comes to you with, for example, asking for a definition of some kind, okay, what is the definition of, say, magic realism, for example, as I am a teacher of literature, then I should not be telling that person that, okay, magic realism is A, B, C, D. I should be going to that person, telling that person, these are the 4 books you should read. Come out with an answer of your own. That is non-directive actually. That will help that person to embrace the very concept of magic realism, or it can be any topic. Okay. Then moving to non-directive counseling, opposite. What is it? The pull approach, okay, which is very emotional in nature. Now the first one was very direct, intellectual. This is more feelings related, personal, emotional kind of. What do you read here? According to Rogers, in any kind or type of psychotherapy, the underlying basis theme is helping relationship. Why do you go to a person? What is the base? Help is the word. It can be of any kind. Most of the times it is emotional. Okay, if you solve that person's problem emotionally, then that person would be able to grow intellectually as well. Second point here is, in all human interactions such as mother child, teacher pupil, therapist learner, etc., the helping relationship is fundamental. Why does a child talk to his or her mother for help? Why does a pupil talk to a teacher for help? Okay, this is how it works. You seek help from the experienced always. Third point is, this relationship is one in which the counselor seeks to bring about a better appreciation and clearer expression of the learner's, this word is important, latent inner resources. You don't know your strengths. As an individual who is fairly young, you don't know what you are good at. Sometimes you are unaware about it completely. What do? I look at that person's strengths and tell him or her that this is how you work towards your strengths. Remember Tare Zameen Par, the very fact of that child who was uh, going through dyslexia, if I'm not wrong. Okay, so that was his weakness, but what was his strength? That he was very creative. So what did the teacher do? He focused upon his creative side, and you could see the wonderful thing that that particular person painted at the end of that movie. So it is believing in what that person is capable of. Then counseling aims at bringing about psychological growth or maturity. This word is very important. You should make that person mature. What is becoming mature? Is becoming balanced. It is as simple as that. You should be balanced as an individual, neither very happy, neither very sad, neither too excited, neither too low, you are in balance of every emotion that you are going through. If somebody appreciates you, thank you. If somebody criticizes you, thank you again. So that is how you should be. It is very difficult to be like that, but you should try to be like that. Then this helping relationship is also generally a one to one relationship. It cannot be one to many. It has to be one to one. It has to be very personal. Okay. And in this approach, the counselor provides an atmosphere in which the learner can fully explore his or her own thoughts and feelings freely without any fear or pressure. The most important thing here is you should be fearless when you're talking to somebody. You should be able to talk your mind to the person who is listening to you, which is very important. Because if you're not able to be free, you'll not be able to counsel as an individual, that as a teacher you'll not be able to exactly go to the problem area that is there. So you'll have to allow that person to feel very free. As I told you earlier also, just suggest, don't impose. That is how you counsel people. So on your screen again, you have an image on the left side, and on the right side, you have certain points. Now, what is non-directive counseling? In the bracket, it is written the pull approach. What do? You listen to understand. See, any counseling that you do, it deals with listening. It is as simple as that, and helping, of course. Second is reflecting upon what is told to you by the potential counselee, paraphrasing, summarizing, and questioning to raise awareness. Now you are questioning not to find answers, you are questioning to raise the awareness of that particular person with regard to that problem. Okay, that problem can be huge also, it can be very minor also, but for that person, always remember, for that person it is a very important problem to be dealing with. For you it might be something which is very normal, and you might think within yourself that, okay, is this a problem? But for that person it is. So you should be listening very attentively, even if that particular topic to you does not seem to be very serious. Try to be listening very attentively. Okay, then what do you do next? These are the characteristics of non-directive counseling on your screen. Okay, which is the first characteristic? It is meaningful to the persons involved, as it implies mutual self commitment. Very important. How do you mutually commit? Which is the word that comes to your mind? Trust. The person who is talking to you should trust you completely. The second point is it has a marked tone of feeling. That is, the individuals who are involved experience certain emotional states. They are going through a lot of emotional flux. You'll have to make them feel very comfortable, settle them emotionally, and then start talking. Third point is it implies integrity. Very important word in our profession, of course. The persons involved are intellectually and emotionally honest with each other. Honesty is the first thing that you need to have. If a person who is coming to you is not honest to you, you'll not be able to provide them with solutions at all. Okay, then it can exist by mutual consent only. If I am willing, you are not willing, non-directive counseling does not help. Both of us will have to be sailing in the same boat in order to be aware about what the counselee is going through. Then when it comes to existence, or when you are talking about existence, that is when one is in need of some kind of help which another can reasonably provide. Whom do you go to? It is very simple. I'll give you a simple example in the outside field. When you are in need of money, where do you go to? You go to a bank. You cannot go to a school for money. So you as a person should be able to provide that particular solution to that person. So that problem has to be, first of all, compartmentalized. But when do you go to a bank? When you know that you are capable enough of getting a loan from the bank. Bank will only provide you a loan if you are good enough for getting the loan. So when do you go to a particular person? When you know that that person is very important to you, that person will listen to you, your emotional state of mind, and give you a particular solution or solutions to whatever the problems are. Then what does it involve? Two basic things: interaction and communication. Okay, both are one and the same things, but you'll have to be very communicative when you're listening. So communication can be non-verbal also. For example, if you're listening to your counselee, you should be nodding your head, you should be looking at that person very attentively, not sitting laid back and talking. That does not help. Then it is sustained through mutual cooperation and collaboration. We should be cooperative with each other. Okay, I may not be good at everything. So is the same case with your side also. You might not be good at everything as well. So when you are counseling, non-directive is usually between friends sometimes. So as I told you, you will have to become a friend of that particular person first of all. The helping person must have a sense of security. Okay, you should provide security, and you should be secure enough as well to listen to almost anything that is told to you. And the last point is the goal or object of the helping relationship is to change the learner. Which way? Positively. There should be a change, but that change has to always be positive. It cannot be the other way around. Okay, so here is a chart on your screen. These are techniques of non-directive approach. Okay, so what do you do first? Right, the top is listening. You listen. That is the first thing that you need to do. Second is you accept what you listen, because we should be barrier free or we should be objective when we listen. Third point is respect and understand that problem for that particular person is of life and death. For you, it might not be, but you will have to listen to that problem as if it is very important. And last thing is respond. Respond non-verbally also. Verbally, all right, but you can also nod. Even your eyes can respond sometimes that you're listening. So that is very important. So, what do you do at the end? Now, we have gone through a gamut of issues with regard to counseling. We started with definition to process to steps to types of counseling and goals, which are immediate and long term. And we have gone through a variety of experiences with regard to counseling. So, what does at the end counseling in 3 or 4 lines mean? So, you have it on your screen here. Counseling is a learning oriented process carried in a simple one-to-one environment in which the counselor, professionally competent in relevant psychological skills and knowledge, seeks to assist the learners by methods appropriate to the latter's needs and within that context of the total personnel program, and at the end to learn how to put such understanding into effect in relation to more clearly perceived condition. What do you do at the end of counseling? You provide any person with two basic things. One is clarity, and another is progressive thinking. If you're able to do this, even to a minimum of students in your entire career, let me tell you, friends, you are absolutely worth everything that you do in your entire academic and professional life, because you, as a teacher in higher education, are actually more of a facilitator, more of a counselor, and less of a teacher in the strict sense of the term. So, this is how we end this particular session with regard to counseling. Thank you very much for your time and for your patience.
Friends, I would like to thank the resource person of today for his scholarly deliberation on the topic given. He has talked on various aspects related to higher education. He has talked on various aspects related to teaching and learning, which is really something very much needed to be discussed. Friends, we always try to create such deliberation and discussion. This is just an initiation. This is just a platform where we try to create some spark on which you can discuss a lot. The deliberation and the endeavor of the resource person today was to just give you a hint about the topic. He just hinted the topic, and now it's upon you how you work on it, what more you read on that, and how you practice it. After all, it is not the speech of the resource person which is very important, but it is your practice, your discussion afterwards, your reading of the topic afterwards, your carrying out research on it, and most important is your practice on it. That is most important. The resource person has done the job. Now it is your job. Your work starts. How you take this to the class? After all, whatever we do, whatever the HRDC is doing, whatever this Ministry of Human Resource Development or Education Department is doing, whatever UGC is doing and the universities and state governments are doing, are all for the betterment of our students. Friends, you are the future creators. You are the people who can nurture the future of India. They are our students and they are in your hands. Now, how you take these topics to them is very important. I would like to thank the resource person of today on behalf of you, all the viewers and participants, on behalf of Gujarat University, all the stakeholders of Gujarat University, on behalf of the team of UGC Human Resource Development Center of Gujarat University, from those who are working for the success of these sessions directly or indirectly. At last, I would like to express a sense of gratitude to the resource person of today from me personally and professionally. Thank you very much.